had a friend, which in hindsight I call it a friend in quotes. She would go out of her way to make me look like a fool, to the point to where she would lie to me, reveal the truth, and laugh at me for ever believing her in the first place. To everyone in the US watching this, hope you had a filling and fun and restful Thanksgiving. I took a little holiday earlier this week on Stuff I've Never Told You. Didn't put out videos on Monday or Wednesday, but came back on Friday with what boobs say about you. Thanks to everybody who watched and commented on last week's Ask Kristen video, why do people stay in abusive relationships? A sincere thank you to everyone who commented and also privately messaged me about their experiences. Now onto this week's Ask Kristen question, which came up in the comments of abusive relationships, not in the context of romantic partners, but rather friendships. Sandra Starr commented, while I personally don't know about romantic abusive relationships, I know a lot about being in a relationship where your friend is your abuser. Having this friend insult my family when I confide to her about some problems, me apologizing for my religion, and only getting along when we acted goofy or when we agreed on something. Hence, my constant apologies for whatever she didn't agree with. Lindsay Corliss commented about emotional abuse. She said, I think it's important to note that abusive relationships are not always physically violent and that they do not always occur between romantic partners. Caitlin's Book Nook asked, do you think this can apply to abusive friendships too? The person would abuse me verbally all the time and followed the pattern of the chart, or is this applying just to relationships? The chart that Caitlin's Book Nook asked about is the one that I referenced in Why Do People Stay in Abusive Relationships, and it outlines this cycle of abuse, which can absolutely take place in friendships as well. Emotional abuse is far more subtle than physical abuse, obviously, because it doesn't leave behind physical symptoms and signs of the abuse. In the case of friendships, you might make excuses for someone being abusive in the sense of, oh, well, he or she is just really opinionated or just tells it like it is. When in fact, what that person is doing, consciously or unconsciously, is systematically eroding your sense of self-confidence, self-worth, your entire self-concept, to create a lot of codependence on that other person and on their overriding opinions and criticisms about who you are. It tends to manifest in big ways through either outright verbal abuse by constantly putting you down, constantly criticizing you, but also constantly feeding self-doubt. If you do start to notice these kinds of patterns in your friendship, and if you pay attention and consider whether this friendship is really building you up or breaking you down, the answers to those questions are really going to determine whether it's time to break up from that possibly abusive friendship. A lot of psychologists will talk about how emotional abuse, even though it might seem more benign than physical abuse, is nonetheless very, very harmful to us in the long term. It can leave those kinds of scars that we can't see. I do think it's important to distinguish between someone who's just a bad friend and someone who is an abusive friend. There are people who are just not very good at being friends, and these are the people who only want to talk about themselves, very bad at asking you questions about how you're doing. They might not put as much into the friendship as you put into the friendship. Those kind of friendships can, if the other person is willing to, improve and become more healthy and functioning friendship. When it comes to abusive friendships, if you try to talk about yourself, the other person won't listen. The other person will shut you down and minimize and marginalize whatever you're going through. Remember, the constant theme in this type of abuse is eroding your sense of self, your self-worth, your self-confidence. It's usually in your best interest to leave. Now I want to hear from you. Who has experienced this kind of friendship abuse, and what advice do you have for people to avoid it and also to get out of these very real and very toxic relationships? Let me know in the comments below. And hey everybody, I'm about to go on an early holiday vacation. So for the next few weeks, I'm still going to be answering a lot of your questions, even more questions than I normally ask, just in a little bit of a different format. Don't worry, Ask Kristen will be coming back. And if you really like like this new-ish segment that I'm testing out, I'll do that too, because you all asked so many wonderful questions. Till I see you again, stay well and stay terrific. And hey, speaking of Thanksgiving, what am I thankful for? I'm really thankful for all of you, and that is cheesy but true.